Hey everybody, it's me, Chris Herman, here for another episode of On Deck. Today I have my good friend, Mr. Todd Katcher, who is not only a co-conspirator in the automotive marketing world, but also a very knowledgeable individual when it comes to health and fitness. Todd is the owner of Digital Dealership System, which is an in-store video marketing tool that a lot of stores here in South Florida and around the country use as a way to personalize their marketing messages in the dealership. So we spent a lot of time talking about how important it is for dealers to personalize their marketing messages in the store and what a differentiator it is and can be for their business. Of course, after that, we veered into another great topic, health and fitness, of which Todd has, if not more, passion for. So I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. So without further ado, it's Todd Katcher. Here you go. I think we are now officially underway. Todd, how are you doing, man? Welcome.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You're on deck, buddy.
I'm on deck. I'm here.
Here you go. Todd, you, amongst other things, so I think you've got a lot of things going on, if I understand you correctly. But how I know you and how we interact in the space is your company is Digital Dealer Solutions, correct?
Digital Dealership
Systems.
Yeah, there is another company that's Digital Dealer Solutions, but we're very different. That often comes up. So
let me say that again.
Yeah,
Todd, your company is Digital Dealership Systems.
That's correct.
And the primary product and service offering is big, beautiful video walls in dealerships, service menu boards, all really nicely organized, so that dealers can be in control of the messaging in their stores.
Yeah, we basically say we're in-store marketing. So most dealerships spend 99% of their budget driving traffic to the store. They rely on agencies and advertising and social media and all that stuff to drive traffic to the store. And then once in the store, they rely on their staff to communicate. Most dealers have nothing digital inside the store, where most of their marketing outside the store is digital. So digital signs are basically in-store marketing on screens. And there's a lot of statistics about digital signs, about how just in digital in general. I mean, when was the last time that someone picked up a newspaper? The idea that digital has a higher capture rate, as much as 78% more people are going to go ahead and remember things that they see digitally, and they see it multiple times. Whereas if you put a sign on the wall that says, oil change 1995, people ignore that. It almost is the same color as the wall in most situations, right? So by having those flashing and by having those, you'll see people, the psychology of people, when the messaging is always changing, and you have multiple, what we call zones, multiple things happening on one screen. Every time that screen changes, their eyes look, because they don't want to miss anything, So one of the things that we do is we have screens, we say, throughout the journey. The customer journey. So when somebody walks in, we have screens. If with service or sales, manager boards, video walls, really changing the store. And then I think dealers in general they say that they want to make their store different. They're different from everybody else, but then they still do the same vanilla box or the OEM requirements and nothing more. So those dealers that do more, they benefit from that. Mm-hmm. And they doing more inside the store. I used to have a manager when I was in the gym business. They would say, live by the door, die by the door. But that's how most dealerships do it. When sales are bad, it's because the leads are bad. It's not because of their process inside the store.
What does that mean, live by the door? Wait, what was it? What did you say?
It's something way back. Live by the door, die by the door. So if you're focused 100% on what's walking in the door,
right,
you're not taking care of the people inside your business. So take it from it came from a guy that used to own Gold's Gym in Fort Lauderdale.
Right.
So he would say, if you're not following up, if you're not trying to get people in the door, and you're just not worrying about whatever advertising comes in, and you're not nurturing,
right,
you're not.
Okay.
So in car dealerships, that relates to, on the sales side, how are you reaching out to service customers? What's your messaging to those people? How are you calling on people, asking for referrals? People who you sold vehicles to before. There's all sorts of techniques. But if you're just relying, for dealerships, that might be live by the door, die by the door, but it's also live by the external marketing, die by the external marketing, because if you're not doing anything inside to market to your existing customers, how do you increase your PVR?
Right. Do you think that there's so much for us to talk about
Sure.
just on that one thread? You know, for example, I mean, I've been in countless dealerships where either your system or a competitor's system is involved or installed, but so many times it's just like running like the standard factory running footage, and there's nothing really personalized about it, right?
Yeah.
Like you came into my space here, and one of the things that we're talking about is just how I am continually trying to personalize this space. Now, I'm not a dealership,
Sure.
but I think we agree that dealers often miss an opportunity to use this technology to really create something that's got real wow factor for when the customer goes in.
100%. I think the big thing that, so there's a couple of tangents there. So the manufacturer mandates certain things for stores, and different manufacturers mandate different things, right? So the couch that you have at a car dealership is often not the couch that you may want, but it's the couch that you have to select from, right? The tile that you have is going to be, you may choose from 1 or 2 or 3 different tiles. So while if you're going to build a new store and you have X number of square feet or acres to build on, they go ahead and say, okay, here's 2 floor plans to choose from. And you may tinker a little bit, but most dealerships do the minimum amount to get by to meet the OEM standards to get whatever cashback offers they have. Manufacturers see internal marketing as a way to go ahead and extend their brand inside the manufacturer brand. Remember that manufacturers don't care where you buy their, let's just say X vehicle, as long as you don't buy a Y vehicle, right? So like brand A, I don't want to be specific.
Sure.
So let's say brand A goes ahead and says, we want you to buy car A from brand A. We don't care which dealership you buy it from. So we're going to mandate certain things in our in-store experience to highlight our brand. And it's the same. I say it's like McDonald's. McDonald's is a franchise just like car dealerships are.
Sure.
Dealerships don't want to hear that, but there's really no different. They buy the product from the manufacturer and they sell a product at a price that has some sort of a standardization based on their region or area. Right? So similarities. And it's not the same because one's a consumable, right, as a food, but they are buying it. Like if you own a Burger King or a McDonald's, you can't go to Costco to buy your box of Coca-Cola. You have to get it from their distributor, and you pay more for it. So while you could do something less, you don't have that option. So the manufacturer will go ahead and tell them to say, hey, you know what? We don't want ESPN on your screens in your showroom. So we're going to mandate that you put our advertising in there, and we're going to feed that advertising in there, and you don't have any say into what additional advertising you can. Now, that type of mandate is a very strong mandate, but those mandates that are out there, they don't say that the dealership can't add additional screens for customization. So even if you do have an OEM mandate, that doesn't mean that you can't add additional services from companies like ours that go ahead and provide that additional marketing specific for.
I didn't realize, of course, over the years, having been in this business a long time, and certainly there's been, whether you want to call it a mandate or recommendation, whenever there's particular seasonal events for manufacturers, of course, they ship all the POP, and that's what the dealership's supposed to have, and everybody's got the same stuff, right? Has that gone to video content? Like our stores that have built-in video walls and stuff, is the manufacturer saying this is what we want running?
So oddly enough, it's very independent of each manufacturer.
Right.
And they have minimum requirements, and then they have vendor or vendors. So some manufacturers have one particular vendor that everyone has to use, and they have a minimum requirement. And then the dealership can add additional screens outside of that requirement, again, to customize that experience for their store. And they don't have to get it from that manufacturer, from that provider. Some manufacturers will go ahead and say, you have 3 providers to choose from, and there's a minimum requirement. But in that case, that particular manufacturer went ahead out and said that those 3 companies can vie for your business, and then they all had different ideas of what the minimum requirements were. And so you had some dealers of that manufacturer paying $300 a month and some paying $5,000 a month. And they're all told the same story, that we're the approved provider, so you have to go with us. And so, but even in those situations, those dealerships can still add systems outside from companies like us that they have more control over. Mm-hmm. And so the intent for services like ours is that customization that you're talking about is really when you're looking at those videos, and those videos are there saying these are the manufacturer provided videos, but what about our messaging that separates us from manufacturer A, the other manufacturer, the other building of that manufacturer, the other dealership from that manufacturer, maybe 5 miles away. It may even be on the same road.
Right.
So now you're like, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and how do we separate ourselves from that competition, selling the exact same car for the exact same price in the exact same area?
Yeah, you and I have spoken about this before, and I think the same way that you feel, and that is this. Like an ideal situation would be, and I'm going to distill it down to one version of messaging, okay? And this is assuming that the dealership has already done everything to maximize their website and their paid search strategy, SEO, SEM, paid social, third-party leads. They've got they've got their marketing channel footprint solidly in place, right? But there still needs to be a consistent branded message of some sort. When I say branded, that doesn't just mean, hey, hi, we're nice guys, but a consistent something that moves from talking about who we are as a business, it's sales event time, in a way that's consistent, right? So let's just say this particular dealer has a spokesperson, right? So that spokesperson is on all the Facebook ads and the YouTube ads and on network TV and all that stuff. And then on video walls inside the dealership, that spokesperson is like, welcome to so-and-so dealership, we're glad you made it in. Thanks for, checking out our offers. Boom, boom, boom. Here's what it is. Pow, pow, pow. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden you've taken that experience that everybody's had outside and they get into the dealership and it's identical to what they saw, and they get there and it's just like, bam, now you've created something cool.
Yeah, and that's the missing link that most dealers have, because that's the live by the door, die by the door mentality, where they got everything dialed in on the outside.
Right.
So when their sales volume is down, their closing ratio is down, the amount of money they make per car is down, their service revenue is down, their transition from service to sales, their retention, all that stuff is down. Who do they blame? They blame all the outside stuff when they could really take care of that inside. Because if people have a different experience inside, then they're more likely to return. So NADA on a couple of studies has indicated that people will drive further and spend more for a better experience. And so what happens is that if they have what is a better in-store experience? Well, I polled through LinkedIn. I went ahead and polled. I think it's like a significant amount of connections on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. And I polled them this is a couple years ago. I polled them and said, what makes your store different? And they all said the same thing, our people. So if you all think that people are the same thing, well, let's see. Theoretically, you all hire the best people you can, because why would you not?
Right.
You train them the best that you can, theoretically.
Okay.
Right? And you keep your facility clean, theoretically. Mm-hmm. You keep your cars as merchandise as you can. Again, these are all things that every dealership does. So again, what makes your store different if everyone's doing the same thing? They all answer the same thing, our people. So does that mean if your top person, are you talking sales? Because that's not what we're talking about. Sales volume isn't the experience. Sales volume doesn't separate you from the competition regarding experience, right? Mm-hmm. Bottom line, of course. But we're talking about what makes people go to your store versus the next one. If you're in the market for let's say an Audi, right? You could go to several different places to get one, and they're all going to be about the same price, and they could all negotiate a price. So what makes your store different? What's the story that you tell that makes your store different? And then how do you relay that story, as you indicated, like a slogan, right? What's your slogan on the outside? What's your slogan on the inside? And how do you portray that to the customer? How do you make the customer feel different? Because feelings relate to expense. People will spend more for a feeling. Mm-hmm. And that's what experience really is.
But okay, so let's touch on this thing about the people, because, really fundamentally, if you think about any business, right? I mean, think about any hotel chain, think about any Ford dealership, think about any McDonald's franchise, right? At the end of the day, taking the people out, there are fundamental, they're all the same components to any one of these businesses, right? And so it's hard to differentiate the business unless you're talking about the people, right? To some degree, but bear with me. The difference between a good experience and a bad experience at any one of these places usually isn't the physical structure. It's usually how the people take care of you, right?
Sure.
And so it's interesting because it's a hard thing to highlight, particularly in retail automotive, where you've got so much turnover, right? Sure. And I've almost like lost my train of thought on this topic here, but I think that there is fundamentally something special about the people in the car business, and how do you identify it? Because yes, I mean, okay, you got 5 Ford dealerships in the marketplace, right? One can offer, extend their warranties up to 100,000 miles. Do the Rick case. We double the warranty up to 100,000 miles, and we've got the bonus cash, and we've got a gas station. There are things that people can do, but at the end of the day, it still needs to be communicated in a way outside and in that sticks
consistently.
So I kind of wailed all over the place there, but I'm serving it back to you.
Well, so if everybody's trying to hire the best people,
right?
Let's just say they all hire the best people, and they all every person treats their person the way they like to be treated,
right?
Or the way the management or ownership likes their people to be treated, or the staff, the customers to be treated. Most of them don't know, right? You ever call a dealership and it rings 100 times and the person who picks up disconnects the call? And as a vendor, okay, but what if I was a customer? Right? So they're not going to treat us any different, right? Like they're just transferring the call and it drops, or it takes 100 times for them to pick it up, or that type of thing. That's not what the owner would want, but they're not calling their store. Right. They're calling the cell phone of the person, and it's on caller of the person they want to reach, and it's on their caller ID, right? So they pick it up immediately, even if they're in a meeting, right? So let's just say in general that everything is running perfectly from a person standpoint. What control do they have outside of that to enhance the experience? And that's where so when you're saying what makes your store different than everybody else, let's say you have you said 5 Ford dealerships.
Okay,
so all 5 Ford dealerships.
Yeah, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, all Ford dealerships, 5 dealerships in the area have the best people. They treat their people the best. They answer the phone in the first ring. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Whatever their criteria is, it's the same at every single one. Okay, what else do they have to control? The manufacturer has minimum mandates on what the store looks like, from the tile to the furniture to sometimes the pop-up displays, like you mentioned before, the point of sale stuff.
Right.
What makes your store different? What's your story that you're relaying to the customer inside? Because most websites from the manufacturer, they're giving them the opportunity to choose from multiple website providers that they have a relationship with. And then they're able to customize within that framework. You get to the store, where's that branding and messaging? And why isn't it digital?
Right. Well, okay, so number one, again, we agree. It leads me to ask this, there's a couple questions here. Number one is, are we arguing a dying argument? And what I mean by that is this. Clearly, we're seeing continued consolidation going on in the retail automotive space. Groups buying up, regional groups. That's not going to stop. Right. I think the car business that I grew up around and fell in love with, which is the, sort of wild personality entrepreneur, bigger than life dealer who, had all the crazy advertising and they had a very specific thing, right? That's been fading over time, right? That's not to say that they aren't out there, but that has been fading for a number of reasons. And as we see more consolidation and a different generation of managers and owners and leaders come up through the business, I just wonder, are we going to get to a point where that personalization is no longer important because the manufacturer has taken so much control that it's almost not necessary, right? And you might have little pockets of individual dealers that still do it in their small towns and stuff. But when you start talking about large publicly traded groups, is that going to go away? Or do the large publicly traded groups ultimately get past their period of expansion and buying, and you got the Smith platform here and the Jones platform here? At what point does Lithia become Lithia, like AutoNation became AutoNation, and then you can have consistent messaging again?
So different things across that board. So it's 25,000 car dealerships plus or minus. I mean, we could argue that the differences between them, and then you have used car standalone used car stores that are very large and do sometimes more volume than the new car stores. Out of 25,000, you're looking at the largest auto group is between 300 to 400, whatever their number is these days, right?
Is it 25,000 though?
Yeah.
New vehicle dealers or total dealerships?
It may be total, but it could be, again, maybe it's 20 new. And
I thought it was like 8 to 14. I should know that. You should probably know that. Okay, let's go with your, anyway, either way, let's go with your number.
So it's a large number. Say that it's 10,000.
Okay.
The largest auto group has 400. It's a small fraction.
Yeah.
Now, Lithia as a corporation and AutoNation run completely different. AutoNation is very strict on what dealerships, everything goes through corporate unless you get a general manager that's willing to go ahead and get you through their system, or a regional president that's willing to get you through their system. And then they could get customization at their stores. So we're in a couple of AutoNation stores, but we're not in all of them.
Right.
Okay. Because the general manager wanted that personalization. They wanted commercial free content for the lounge area. They wanted service status in the service area. Maybe it's by volume. But it's maybe because the GM just wanted to put his neck out there and say, hey, I want this product. And as a GM, sometimes they do that fight and sometimes they don't. Lithia is very different, where they have corporate structure. They have corporate guidance as far as a certain programs that they do from a corporate wide program, more for the visibility of corporate to see that and track dealership level, whether it's advertising or marketing. But the individual stores, and when they acquire groups, they let them run. And if the numbers are good and they meet their needs, they let them do whatever they want at the store level. So when they acquire a group, they normally keep the structure of that group there because they bought it based on their revenues. And what they do is they look at the maximum expenditures of the store and they try to reduce those. But products like ours, we do a full store for less than $500 a month. So like a product like ours that adds that customization, if a dealer, they're not going to, Lithia Corporate's not going to fight that fight. So the two largest automotive groups, let's just say at the 10,000 mark, whatever that number is, have less than 10% of the market.
Right.
Then you have a whole bunch of dealership auto groups that are in that 20 to 50 range, right? And they're all run differently. I think that personalization, so personalization to me is not about the customer personalization, it's about the messaging from their group or their store, and how to have that brand or that logo or that that messaging through all platforms. And they do it online, but they live by the door and die by the door.
Right.
And that message isn't there. I've been into stores that they say our motto is on the wall. And that's like their claim to fame. It's like, written on the wall, like literally, like a huge wall. It's exactly. So, and every dealer sees value differently. Like we have our most popular products. We have a sales leaderboard that's a motivation board that's mainly manager facing, right? So that's one of our popular products. Another one is a service status board. It's a service, DMS connected service status connected with the service and sales marketing. Okay. And then we also have our commercial free TV for the lounge. And then we could add service status to the lounge TV. So those are our three top products. And those are products that no one else is offering at the level of what we're doing. So when a manufacturer has a mandate, they don't mandate products like those three products, because they're at a high level technology-wise. And it's really up to the individual dealer to say, I want that. And so does that customize the process? Does it motivate people? When you walk into a car dealership, and the average car dealership, in my limited research, is going to call, like when you have an appointment, they're going to call you 3 to 5 times once you make the appointment to make you show up.
Right.
So they're going to work you to get the appointment. So you fill out a form online, or you have a chat or whatever else, and they say when you're going to get in, when you're going to come in. They do all their techniques to get you to come in. Once you schedule the appointment, in my research, talking to BDC managers, they're going to call them 3 to 5 times, up to like 15 minutes before the appointment. And then you walk in the door and nobody knows who you are.
Yeah, right, of course.
So why not have a sales appointment board when people walk in with their name on it, the picture of the vehicle? We sell it for $99. Are you telling me the dealership doesn't have $99, or it's not a priority because they're living by the door and dying by the door?
Right.
Because they look at the number of dealerships, people walk in, right? They look at the number of people that walk in the door and they say, okay, this is the number of appointments, this is the number of shows, this is what we should close. And they work that backwards. So you want to sell 200 cars, how many appointments do you need? And they work backwards. Mm-hmm. But what if they were able to do the same effort but close more deals, or get people to buy stuff from service because you have people who are already spending money in your service department trading in their car or moving into taking a test drive while they wait. They're already there.
All right, so you're preaching to the choir.
I got you.
Right? You know,
we're on
and
the same page.
I'm with you. We're on the same page here. You know, why, in your opinion, do dealers not embrace this as much as they should?
It's an inexpensive impact. It's inexpensive with high impact. And I think that if you're going to open up a car dealership, you make a list of all the things that you need. Now you're a technology oriented guy, so and you're into marketing, so you're going to think, okay, well, I want the store to look a certain way. Mm-hmm. But they go, I need a CRM, I need a DMS, I need a website, I need social media marketing. How far down that list? The other thing, digital signs in the in-store experience really impact their day. In addition, remember what I said, they think people are the biggest thing. But how many of them actually pay for training for their staff?
Yeah.
And training is much more expensive than digital signs. But if people are the most important thing, how often are you training them? How often are you sitting there with your admin, if they even have an admin? I was in 10 stores a couple of weeks ago, and most stores don't even have admins. So what's the customer experience like? Again, they're focusing on that external that drives traffic to the store, and all the talking heads in the industry, they talk about everything except for the in-store experience. Yeah. They talk about like the buzzwords, digital retailing, Web 2.0, chat, this, that. When was the last time that someone talked, not even digital signs, when was the last time they said anything about how to greet a customer?
I don't know. I mean, I think that there's, just like everything, there's certain stores that are all over it, and some stores, that it's just an afterthought. Right. And I think, this is just one of those things where perhaps people don't realize what a difference it could make in their environment, and it's just sort of like one other neat, cool thing that it's like, yeah, that'd be cool, but I got all this other stuff I got to focus on. And quite frankly, in the last 15 years, dealers have just been inundated with new technology. I mean, just hammered.
100%.
Hammered. I think they're just burnt the fuck out of all this stuff. Yeah. And it's like, okay, that would be nice, but I still got to learn how to use this and use that. My people don't use this tool. They probably see it as another thing that they just have to deal with. Yeah, and about 5 years ago, because of that, we changed to a managed service provider. So in general, a dealership doesn't have to learn our software. They could send us whatever content they want, any updates they want, and we'll do it for them for free. Right. What I think part of the challenge is with car dealerships is that they're very short-term focused. So what happens, and they're told that by the industry, sign up for our program, our widget, right? Our technology, right? And we're going to increase your sales within 30 days. Or there's a new lead generation program. We'll turn it on today and you'll start getting leads tomorrow. Digital signs are a little bit different because it's cultural. How often do people go to the store? Well, once every 90 days, once every couple years, depending on their cycle, service or sales. So when you install services like ours, you see a significant increase in service revenue or sales revenue over time.
So we had a store up in the Chicagoland area who installed our service screens everywhere.
The Chicagoland.
Yeah,
area.
Chicagoland. You know, I'm trying to think of the actual city, but it's not Chicago, but it's
Right.
like, you know, Chicago is kind of like, you know, Fort Lauderdale, you
Sure,
know, where
the
they
metro
say,
area.
the metro area, Chicagoland. So
Where are you headed today? I'm on a flight to Chicago.
yeah, Chicagoland, just somewhere in Chicago, because you can't really land in Chicago, right?
Right, no.
You land outside on the outskirts.
Correct.
So Chicago proper.
Mm-hmm.
So they went ahead and installed screens throughout, and they said they had a 50% increase in the amount of dollars per RO.
Okay.
That's a great stat. We had another dealership who's a small town dealership, and they're competing against the big boys, and they're our largest customer, and they did a $250,000+ install, screens everywhere. Within a month, they saw a significant increase in their closing ratios because they were an older store that was grandfathered in. Their inside was wood. It's a Toyota store. Their in-store was wood, like wood ceilings, like super high wood ceilings.
Right.
Their service department was in another building because their sales department expanded into their old service department. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things, like it's like a jigsaw puzzle type of dealership, and they kept on buying different buildings in their block, you know? And they wound up increasing their closing ratio that wound up paying for the system in a short period of time.
Well, the install system is not even crazy money compared to what these guys spend money on.
It's not. Yeah. And the long-term investment, like that dealership has, like, within 30 days, they added more screens. Mm-hmm. So they have, in this small store, they were doing 80 cars a month, and now they're over 100 after installing our system. Their service revenue has also increased about 30% since installing our system. So they were a small dealer in a big market. They had an increase of 20 to 25% in sales closed, and it's not even an issue. They have screens everywhere. They have 3 video walls in their showroom, 2 9 screens and a 4 screen. They actually called us back. They had a 65-inch screen, and within, like I said, within 30 days, they called us back and said, we want to change out that 65-inch screen to a 4-screen system.
Right.
I mean, that's a big difference in cost. So the idea is that it does work, but they have to have that long-term vision. It's not like you turn it on and immediately, because it's a process. I mean, that install was a 5-day install, plus the prep work beforehand was 2 weeks. Wiring, permits, those types of things. So that's a long time for when everyone else in the automotive space, the vendor space, is saying, sign up today, we'll give you leads tomorrow. Again, outside to the door. What you do with them is up to you.
Right.
And then when you don't have a lot of sales or your sales go down, what do? You blame the leads. So I think it's a long-term vision versus short-term vision.
Who, if you feel comfortable saying, like, who are some of your real success stories with this? Dealers that are doing it, and you've obviously just given one.
I gave you a couple. Yeah. I think there's different levels. So I had one store who went ahead and said, after we did after we installed the sales leaderboard program, the staff was more on their toes and they're more motivated than ever, and they had an increase in sales after doing that, and that's a $300 program.
Right.
There's a dealership here locally that they have leaderboards at every store. Like, every store has leaderboards somewhere. But what they would do is print out their leaderboard the beginning of the day, print it out on their CRM, and then just stick a piece of paper on their leaderboard versus having a digital motivator board with multiple reports built into it. Mm-hmm. So the difference from one to the other has an immediate impact on the emotional aspect of the people that are working there, because you're reinvesting into their workspace. I think those are kind of some of the ideas we did. I think when people do, the more that they do, the bigger impact, because it's the customer journey. So if you just invest in service, and then somebody walks from service to sales, and sales is stale because it doesn't have all these screens and all this motion, then there's not that cohesive message from one area to the other. I always tell people, like, you want to supply the right message to the right customer at the right time, because everybody's dwell time is different at each point of the process. So in the showroom, your messaging needs to be different than it is in the waiting area than it is in service, than it is for your staff, than it is in the finance area. All those messaging needs to be different. So the impact of that is really understanding how you could go ahead and speak to those people and messaging them correctly. I think it's really important to make sure that message is clear. And I think you could get that those increases relatively easily, but it's not like just turning on the water.
Right.
You know?
How did you, we've talked about this. How did you work your way? Because you started off in a different industry, if I remember correctly. You started off in bars and restaurants, right?
Yeah. So
and then worked your way into the car business. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I actually was down here in Florida, and I had a friend who was dating someone who owned bars in Nashville, and I was in the real estate industry. And at that time, this is 2005, 2006, I had a little bit of jingle in my pocket, and he said, it's going to cost you X amount of dollars to go ahead and get in this bar in Nashville. And I'm like, Nashville sounds good. Never been there. And I got a couple dollars, so I'll give you some money. Well, what happened was that it wound up costing 10 times as much to open the bar.
Right.
And I wound up moving to Nashville. I cut everything off in Florida, got rid of my homes down here, and moved up there. And trials and tribulations, but basically there was there were a couple companies up there that were putting pieces of paper, 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, in restrooms, all through Nashville. And they had 30,000 locations, 30,000 stalls. Right. And people would pay, advertisers would pay.
Urinal advertising and stuff
urinal
like that.
Advertising.
Bang, right
exactly.
there. Yeah.
Okay. And the guy didn't even know how many locations he had. I mean, they were just making so much money. And I said, people don't go to an establishment to go to the bathroom. They go to an establishment to go to the bar area.
Right.
I said, I own a bar. And at one point I had 3. So I said, well, why don't we create something, we being me, myself, and I, create something digital. And then it will have entertainment content and it will have advertising content. But it's going to advertise to the bar person. Because here's the thought process. When you go to a bar at 4 o'clock and it's happy hour, but you were going to go either way, the bar actually lost money. Because you went to the bar and you would have paid full price.
Right.
Now, advertising a happy hour special at happy hour when you're already there is counterproductive because you're already there. So that's when I learned internal advertising needs to be different than external. External on social media saying, hey, come to my bar at 4 o'clock
right.
and get half off, that drives traffic. But once I'm there, I'm actually losing money by advertising the wrong thing. What I should be advertising at that time is what's going on Friday and Saturday night, right?
Right.
What's my weeknight of the week? What I karaoke on Tuesday night,
right?
So somebody who's there for happy hour sees, oh, I like this place, I like the vibe here.
Oh, it's Thursday night, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to come back on another night, or oh, hey, that band's playing. I heard of them before, whatever the case is. So what do you do on a Friday night? You advertise your happy hour. You try to get people to come in on Friday, or maybe you advertise bands that are coming on other nights of the week. So I wound up setting up a network in Nashville, and I custom created at that point, 2006, 2000 to 2011. I ordered all these parts from China. I hired a manufacturer. I manufactured my own screens. Okay, so I ordered all the parts. I ordered screens. I ordered I put everything together with a manufacturer in Tennessee. And that actually led to me at one point creating the kiosks that we have now because I learned how to manufacture. Well, I didn't know anything about digital signs. We were running everything off a DVD player. And then I learned about digital signs and the software. Mm-hmm. And there's a software that is networked together and allows you to change the messaging on each screen. So now each screen could be different. And you could update it remotely. So we went down that path. Well, one of my bars was a live music venue, and one of the guys who was a regular owned a car dealership. So shout out to my friend Richard Lyons in Tennessee. And he basically said, well, why don't you create something for me? And I had no idea about the automotive industry. And that's kind of where where everything started, because all of our products that we have today were built off that same mentality of, hey, what are you looking for? Not what I want at the car dealership. It's what the dealership wants.
Right.
So all of our products that we have today were based on that first discussion that I had with Richard, and every other dealership after that. That's why we have so many products, and that's why we offer our products in so many different ways, because dealerships are like, well, why don't you do this, or why don't you do that? And once you start hearing a lot of that conversation, you kind of create your product based on that, as opposed to forcing, hey, this is the product, you either buy it or you don't.
Right.
There's pros and cons to that method, as I learned over time. It makes it very difficult to sell when you have so many options versus just having one.
Right.
But at the same time, when someone says, I want a lounge TV system, well, we offer 5 lounge TV systems. So it becomes a little bit more of a conversation. Then here's the, it's like the Model T, right? One color, black, right? It's easier to sell, but you don't appeal to as many people. Different ways of looking at it. When you have when you don't have any other options, you get the Model T in black.
But that's a lot of people's story right now, right? It's
Right.
like, you have no option. You will take a Camry in white.
Exactly.
That's
so so that's where the story was, and that wound up growing and in Nashville. And then at one point, it was the bar business ran its course in my life. My life changed, and I made the decision at that point to move back to Florida and really focus 100% on the automotive part. And over time, I just learned automotive. But I ask a ton of questions, and that really forms the products that we have and my understanding. Like, everything that I understand is from conversations with agencies such as yourself, vendor partners, vendor friends, dealers. I mean, I was seeing 10 dealers a day. I would go out and see 10 dealers a day every day. And I've been in over 500 dealerships across the country. So I would go to a city and I'd have one meeting in that city, but I'd stay there for 3 or 4 days just for that one meeting. And while I was there, I would go to every single store that I could, whether I had an appointment or not.
Right.
And I'd
just walk in, see the receptionist, and
walk in, kind of get that process down of who to see and what to talk about, and learn hands-on and just do it. And it was not like I hate doing this. It was like, to me, it was research. It was understanding. And it was asking a lot of questions. Do you go
Did you find, okay, so let me just imagine a scenario. You walk into a Chevy deal somewhere and you're kind of walking around and looking, and then somebody comes up and talks to you, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, what do you guys do with this? And before you know, you're in a conversation, right? And then maybe they pass you on, hey, you ought to speak to this guy, right?
Yeah, in some ways. And you find out, do you go in the front door? Do you go in the service door? Who do you talk to? Do you talk to the guy at the drive? Do you talk to the receptionist? If someone said, oh, no, he's busy. I said, depending on your mood, you go, what's he doing? Is he busy with somebody, or is he busy being busy? Car dealers, right?
Right.
So the idea is like, what are, and depending on your mood or how the conversations went, but I would go to 10 dealers in a day. And I would learn from every place that I went into, and I would take pictures at every place that I went into, and I would store them. This is the XYZ Chevy store, and I'd store them online, and I'd go back and look at them. And if I get a call back from them, I know what their store looks like. It's just all that reconnaissance. But because I've walked into so many stores, every store is different in some way. Right? But when you take the collective, it's like saying every person is different. They pretty much fall into certain categories. So if you went ahead and said, if you had wider categories, there might be 10, maybe 20 categories of people, depending on how many people you interact with. You may be able to categorize them as a certain type of person. And that type of person, there might be 10 or 20 types of people in the world. Maybe in the United States, we could say, but you could go ahead and say, based on your interaction with them, because you're not talking to having billions of people. You're categorizing based on the people you speak to. Oh, that person is this way, or this person is they're argumentative, or this person seems negative, or this person seems this, and so you walk into dealerships and you kind of say, okay, this is laid out this way, or this is laid out this way, or this was a extension, or this was and you kind of get that idea of the flow of the store. And that pretty much falls into certain categories, and the management does as well, and it does filter down. Oftentimes when you go into a store and the admin is a certain way, so is the owner. So is the manager. So is the person in charge. There are some dealerships that the general manager that I've been in, the general manager is on the second floor and does not come down all day. Right. They come in, go to the second floor, and they don't come down all day. A lot of times the general manager, I would say, maybe you tell me if I'm wrong in your opinion, 90% of general managers come from the sales side.
Yeah.
Okay. So in that case, the majority of time, and again, I'm being general, they don't even go to the lounge. If you have a car dealership, you have sales, customer lounge, services on the other side, right? Most of the time, the general manager does not walk over to the lounge area, let alone even into the service area. Most of the time,
which is a gigantic mistake. I remember
100%.
When I was in the retail side in training, they were like, as a GM, walk in every morning through the service department. Mm-hmm. You start your day in service, you say hello to everybody, and mm-hmm. then you work your way up front. Mm-hmm. And I did that in my couple little GM stints. But it's just that process of interacting. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. It's so important.
It is, and I've spoken to numerous GMs that don't even know what's on the service screens or the service right. or the lounge or anything else. But their focus is when it comes to, let's say, product like ours, because they're so focused on sales and live by the door, die by the door in sales. They always say service needs help. I had a meeting with a sales manager, a general manager at a local Honda store. I'll tell you offline. But and he was like, I'm fine in sales. Meanwhile, his sales area looks like it was from the 80s. But he's like, service needs help. But the idea is that his idea for service is to invest in service with digital screens, which is fine. But at the same time, he hasn't been over to service lately. He hasn't even walked the area. All he does is look at the numbers and says service needs help. Mm-hmm. But the idea is that they really don't, most of them don't walk over that area, and all their meetings are over in their area.
Right.
So they're disconnected from the customer experience and from their own staff. And I think that disconnect relates to everything else going on in the dealership.
Yeah. It's just just a management style. Some people are better at it than others. I don't understand anybody who owns or manages a business that doesn't at least once a day walk around the entire place and look and say, "Oh, there's a light bulb out." Yeah. It's just what I was taught to do. Yeah, and I still do it. I remember. Somewhere I heard this theory, like the broken window theory, right? And the broken window theory is basically like if there's a house in a neighborhood and a window is broken and the owner of that house doesn't fix it, it's only a matter of time until other houses have broken windows. And basically it's a statement of mindset that if you don't take pride in making sure every detail about your place is up to speed and done, and if you start to let it slide, then other things start to slide.
Sure.
And you just got to be on top of all that.
Well, I mean, it bothers me, but because of the industry that I'm in. But have you ever gone somewhere and the TV is off? Or and how does that impact your experience or your impression of the store? Like, let's say you go to a bar. Let's take it out of automotive. And they have a TV that's not on. What about if you go to a bar at 9 o'clock at night and the ugly lights are on, the bright lights, Right. Like, who's watching this place? And as detail oriented as that may seem to some people, don't you want those establishments to be that way?
Sure. Well, think about the difference between like a nice hotel and a not nice hotel.
Sure.
You go into a nice hotel, you go into a Ritz-Carlton, you go into Four Seasons, you go, name it, it doesn't matter.
Sure.
When you walk in, what's on in the room? The TV. And what's on? Their internal beautiful promotion channel.
Maybe
showing
your name.
all their properties. Right. Yeah, right? Like you go in and it's like all of a sudden you're looking at some resort in Tahiti and you're like, oh, wow. Know, right? Yeah. You go into a not nice place, TV's off, you know, and you just walk into the room, you're like, it's just a different feeling. Not to say that, listen, we all stayed in a number of different places, but you feel different when you go into a place where they're paying attention to the details.
Smells different.
Oh, yeah.
Looks different.
Right.
The finishes. But when you look at auto dealerships, remember they have what we talked about before. They have manufacturer mandates on certain things. But when you're in a franchise situation, see, the difference between car dealerships and Burger King is that Burger King is the same advertising everywhere. Mm-hmm. Franchises for Burger King, they have the same, it's the same pricing, it's the same offering. They can't change it at all. Okay. Regionally, some areas they have certain things that are on the menu, but that's decided by corporate, not the individual owner of the place. Car dealerships have a lot more flexibility, but under the umbrella of a franchise. And that's where they kind of have the opportunity to customize that user experience or that customer experience. Most dealerships have the ability to make a lot of customization on their own, but they're also under the umbrella of the manufacturer. So if they want to add things to customize their messaging, look, on their website, they have all these different options. You need a website, but here's the suppliers that we work with, right? In the store, I believe dealership manufacturers should have some sort of criteria, but then the dealership should be able to choose which provider they go to for that to meet that criteria. And that's really, I mean, because when you walk into the biggest complaint that most customers have in car dealerships is time. It takes too long to buy a car, right? And lack of transparency in service and sales, right? I believe those are the two most talked about issues. So if you have, you know how many dealers, especially when we install a video wall, can we watch the game on that? I said, you're going to hand out beer too? If you're trying to create a sports bar, then be a sports bar, but you're going to elongate the sales process. And their retort is going to be things like, well, people aren't going to buy cars on Sunday when the game is on. I said, they're going to your dealership because they have a need. And they want to get it done and get out as fast as possible. And if they're sitting there watching the game while you're trying to transact with them, it's going to elongate the process because guess what? Your car dealership isn't the ideal place to watch the game to them.
Right.
But there are dealerships, and you know one locally that we talked about earlier, they have 10 screens in their store on different, if ESPN had 10 channels, they'd have one screen on they'd have one TV on every channel of ESPN. They don't want to put on manufacturer content. They don't want to put on marketing content. It's just, they just want to go ahead and run. They think that that's helping them in some way.
Right.
It's creating energy in the store. Mm-hmm. But what about if you have people that like different teams? What if you have people that, these are all things I like to consider. And, you have commercials. What about those commercials for your competitors that advertise on those TV screens? So while you're sitting there doing a deal, there's another Honda store that comes up while you're in a Honda store.
Right.
In your showroom that's talking about $199 a month for a car. The person probably doesn't qualify for it, but you're doing a deal for $399 a month because that's what they qualify for the exact same car. Don't you think there's going to be some hesitancy there?
There could be. Yeah, there could be. Listen, it's a sloppy business in some ways. There's a lot of variables that go into this.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how has the last 2 years, COVID, inventory, has it affected your business or how your dealers see what you do?
So during COVID, I think all vendors had a couple down months. Mm-hmm. We were working from home. We didn't lose customers at all. But it just kind of died down. We couldn't call them to sell. Right. So, that type of relationship wasn't there the same way. For those that contacted us, we supported them as much as we could. And I think overall, though, our business is strong. The inventory shortages, I think some dealers have looked internally towards their service departments because service department revenue, I think, across the board been up because people need to get their cars serviced either way. Even if they don't have a car, some of them are extending their leases or extending their purchasing cycle, so they have older cars that need to get serviced more. Mm-hmm. So we've had a lot of people looking to add like status boards or menus and marketing and service. A lot of the messaging that we're getting from dealers is all about trade in your vehicle.
Sure, yeah.
And so those trade messages are really powerful. I had an idea to one dealership to say, trade in your car today and save on service. Because customers, the average layman customer doesn't know that if you trade in your car, you don't have to pay for your service today. So if you incentivize them, here's $100 to take a test drive while you wait. Well, some dealers will spend up to $500 to sell a car in marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have a customer who's already in your store and already has a car, and you offer them $100 to get a test drive, dealers should do that all day long. So you have a customer who's in your lounge for an hour, average wait time, and you incentivize them to take a test drive while they wait. What's your odds? What are the odds of somebody, once they're on a test drive, to actually buy a vehicle?
Mm-hmm.
It's just extremely high.
Well, certainly better, yeah.
So if you could incentivize that process to a customer that's already in your store and has time, why not? And so as dealers would do that, they'd have a lot of success. But again, that's outside the box thinking, because it didn't necessarily come from an agency or from outside marketing, because it's a message that could only be told inside. That goes back to the happy hour scenario, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would you advertise that to somebody outside? Take a test drive, we'll give you $100. Well, you're already spending money to get that ad in front of that person.
Right.
So that doesn't really incentivize them. Now, if you go ahead and do it to someone who's in your store, you spent zero money to get that person. They're coming into you to service their vehicle, and you offer them $100 to take a test drive, you're capitalizing it. So now what's your acquisition cost to sell that vehicle? It's significantly less than it would be if you just focus externally.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of different ways that you could do that, and your messaging on screens can be impacted by what's going on in your store, and it's a simple change that we do remotely within 24 hours. So we get an ad or a marketing update from where our average response time is less than 90 minutes to close a ticket. So if a dealership sends us, hey, put this on the screen, we'll put it up usually within under 90 minutes.
Right.
But they don't have to worry about managing it.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have to worry about, hey, when's this going to be live? It'll be live shortly. So it's just a different mentality. And I think those dealers who embrace that, hey, we have this technology, we have these screens, how are we using them in this market to drive sales, to drive transition from service to sales? How do we drive test drives? How do we make our store look different when we're all low in inventory, we all have shortages, we all have new protocols? Last year we were getting ads, and we put up ads on dealership on dealership screens that was about COVID protocols. We got a lot of dealerships were doing sanitization, right? So we were going ahead and putting those videos into their customer lounge TV programs, so people felt comfortable.
Right.
And those are all different things that we've done over the last couple of years, different, and how we're working with dealers differently too.
Right.
Because they all have different needs, and so we, just like from how the company was started, just asking those needs and addressing them. So
shift gears.
Yeah.
What have you been doing to take care of yourself? Or you said last time we spoke, you were like starting to get into cooking food and all that stuff.
Always. Yeah.
Curious. Tell me, any new learnings in that field?
Always. It's been the goal, I think, the last 3 years of really personal self-development. So, I mean, I believe you are what you feed yourself. So not only food, but also your brain.
Sure.
Your visual, everything. So I do everything from saunas to cold baths to testing out different nootropics. I listen to audiobooks when I drive. I listen to podcasts when I work out. I mean, I watch YouTube while I eat. So I have like a process. I monitor things. I wear an Oura ring. I monitor everything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm constantly trying new things, and I think that I'm constantly changing my workouts. I do blood work every 90 days. Like I'm constantly looking at everything that I do to see what changed, and I purposefully change whatever I do every 90 days. Keep what's working, move on what's not working, and sometimes just change to see where it takes my body.
What are some of the things that you've learned, like from a dietary perspective? I mean, what works for your system? Because it's different for everybody, right?
At the end of the day, it's calories in versus calories out, right? And then it's the quality of calories, because your body's going to process different calories differently. And this is a rabbit hole that can spend a day on.
Yeah.
But and this is where I spend most of my time, is on the health industry. I think there's a lot of false narratives about nutrition, like different types of diets, right? And I think the diet that you could stick with forever is the best diet. So if you're on a diet, which to me, by definition of society, is short term, I think your diet is long term. Because what happens if you go on a 90-day diet, or a 30-day diet, or a 14-day diet, whatever it is, what happens afterwards?
Yeah.
If you go back to where you were before, then you're going to go ahead and get back to where you were before.
Yeah, even just the whole term diet,
Right.
it just seems so nonsensical in a way. It's like you have to make a commitment, a choice, and a commitment to a healthy lifestyle.
Lifestyles.
You have to know what that entails. And then you also have to recognize there's going to times when you're going to kind of veer out of it. And,
Exactly.
I mean, that's,
you got to tweak.
You got to tweak. But what I've had to do is in the times when I've fallen off my ideal lifestyle plan, is to not beat the shit out of myself.
Yeah.
Because when you do that, then all of a sudden, then I'm like, I need to fast for 4 days to get back on the program. And it's like, no, you don't. You just, if you're off course, you got to just gradually get yourself back on course.
100%. Yeah, I listened to a podcast by Andy Galpin yesterday, and he was talking about, I think it was 7 days. So if you go ahead and don't eat sugar for 7 days, and when I says sugar, it's not just like table sugar,
right?
It's anything sweet. So no fruit. There's there's table sugar, right? And then there's stuff that tastes sweet. So he's like, no sweets, nothing sweet at all, even like Diet Coke. Like, it's not about calories. But if you went ahead and in his studies, take somebody off of sugar or anything for 7 days, when you go back, it's like a total reset. Where he said in his example, a bell pepper tastes sweet after 7 days, because you haven't tasted the bell pepper the same way, because your body's adapted to a certain level of sweetness. I'm not talking about sugars like added sugar.
Right. No, I understand.
But so the idea is that your biometric reset, your overall reset of your body, your internal reset, what your taste buds reset. It could be caffeine. Go off of caffeine for a week, and then have a coffee, and how does your body react to it? It's a reset.
Yeah.
And I think so. It's a wide question. For me personally, I did this thing. So I didn't know about like bulking. I didn't understand it because I never did that. When you eat a lot more calories in order, I wanted to test it on myself, and this is going back several years. And what I wanted to do was, I was under the theory that I could go ahead and gain muscle faster by being in a calorie surplus. So if I was eating, and if I kept the same food all the time, my amount of muscle would increase. Muscle burns calories at rest. So what happens is that as you increase your muscle, if you keep the same calories, they would balance out at some point. Well, when I got up to 240 pounds,
I remember you.
And I was an extra large, and I was, and nobody would say that people wouldn't say that I was necessarily fat, because I was big all around. It completely transformed me, right? So when I went that route, I realized, you know what? This isn't gaining more muscle. I gained more fat. As of just a couple weeks ago, one of the scientists that I listened to said a calorie surplus over your set point, your set calories for maintenance, can be as little as 100 calories a day. That's 700 calories a week. There's 3,500 calories of 1 pound of fat. Okay. So I was at 1,000 calorie surplus a day. I was eating 3,500 calories a day. So it took me a year, and I lost 75 pounds.
Dude, I remember you. I saw you. I remember seeing you one time. You were big.
Yeah.
You were a big boy.
Yeah.
You were a big boy.
Yep. Double XL shirts. But remember, I was big and I had a round face and a round body. I've had people ask me if I was a professional bodybuilder, because that's the look that they might get in an off season,
right,
before they slim down. And so what I learned through that process was a lot about myself, but then I also learned just a lot about just the body, how the body works, food intake. And I've been cooking my own food since college, but I just cooked more. And if anyone who says they can't gain weight, I'll give you the stuff to gain weight, because it's like adding little things to your food to go ahead and that are very calorie dense. And so there's lots of things you could add that are just like a tablespoon of peanut butter is enough to go ahead. That tablespoon of peanut butter is your calorie surplus. Have 3 of those a day.
Oh, I can't have peanut butter.
It's like,
I can't have it,
right,
because I'll
scoop it. You just keep
I'll eat 5-6 spoonfuls of this stuff. I just can't have it around.
Easy. But you go ahead and you add that to like a shake, or you add that to it's just a very small thing that's super calorie dense. And there's a whole lot of things that you could do that seem healthy, right? Some things are healthy. You can make healthy choices and still eat too much.
Yeah.
And I think it's really like over the last 90 days, it was 2 cycles ago. So I say 2, so I did my life in 90-day cycles. So it's like 180 days ago. I started working out with weights differently, shorter period of time, but then doing walking afterwards at an incline and certain things and different types of cardio afterwards. And that just helped my overall body function better as far as the joints and the muscles and everything else. I was doing cardio before, but I only do it 1 or 2 days a week. But now I'm doing it more regularly. Mm-hmm. And I have like a morning cardio and a night cardio routine. So it's a little bit of everything. But I've really enjoyed, you can't really say you enjoy cold baths, 34 degree temperature. Right.
Now, are you doing that? Well, certainly you've come across Wim Hof at some point in time.
Yeah. So
my wife just sent me a video about a cold plunge. It was funny just because it's something I would love to have a cold plunge someday, and to do that regularly, because there's all the data says that it's really good for you.
100%. I've been doing contrast therapy, so I do, which is basically a clinical term for going from the sauna when you're 140 degrees for 15 minutes, and then into the 34 degree ice bath.
Yeah.
So, and the ice baths, someone said this Angie Fletcher is her name online. And she said, you're really cool. Some of the things she says, she's very quotable. And she says things like, the water never gets colder. The water never gets warmer. Your mind gets stronger. And those days that I get in the bath, I'm less aggressive, because my mind's already.
Now, how do you do it?
So instead of going ahead and buying one of those ice baths that you could buy that are like automated,
right?
They run anywhere from $4,000 to $6,000. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to make that investment. Now I've been doing this for over a year, so I mean I can make that investment now because I know I'm using it on a regular basis. But I got an ice chest from Home Depot. Big. It's I think it's 6-foot ice chest.
Right.
So it's about $700, and then I filled it up with water, and put it on a timer, so it goes on for 4 hours a night at max freeze.
Right.
And then I go to the sauna for 15 minutes, and then I go into my garage, and I get into the ice bath for 5 minutes. And I just sit there and I breathe. And
is that really what you have to do, is just focus on your breathing, right? I mean, that's what I've heard. I mean, I've gotten in cold plunge pools, but not like I have not done an ice bath.
It is a mind over matter, where you're calming your body, because everything in your body, not now, but everything in your body says, this is cold. Just like it would say, this is hot. Like, do you put your hand on a hot stove?
Right.
No. But if you thought there was some intrinsic benefit, maybe. But the idea is that if you went ahead and get into cold and you're like, I got this. You talk to yourself. You know, you might have a mantra that you say, or you might have a thing that you focusing on the breath to me is simplifying.
Right.
I think it's more like sometimes I'm watching a podcast and I'll just bring that and I'll just watch that or I'll listen to that, but I'll usually close my eyes. But I'm also conscious of like how I feel when I close my eyes, because you're not going to pass out because you're not holding your breath. Your deal is to calm your breath, because you can't calm your mind with your mind. It's deep, right? But you can calm your mind with your breath.
Gotcha.
And you could calm your mind with your body. So if your body's calm, if you're sitting there under the water and you're like, you're not going to be calm. But if you calm your mind with your body and with your breath, I get in within 10 seconds, I'm breathing normal. First time, probably hyperventilating for a good minute. Mm-hmm. But once you learn to breathe, it's all that. It's like breathing is so important. Did you read Nestor's book, Breathe? No. If there's certain guys that you look up and you listen to their podcast, then you don't have to read the book. So this guy, Nestor, he talks about breathing and the benefit of breathing and box breathing and this breathing and all these different things. And he's a clinical psychologist. No, he's an experimental guy. He does experimental. So he's like, there's ways that your mouth is actually deformed based on mouth breathing. Your jawline can actually change and be detrimental to your body by mouth breathing. When you breathe through your mouth, you might get more air but less oxygen into your body. Mm-hmm. So through your nose, your body's releasing nitric oxide, and the cilia in your nose is actually taking in oxygen from the nose. Whereas if you go through your mouth, the oxygen doesn't come in until into your respiratory area. So it's a different process. And so when you're breathing through your nose, it's much more efficient for your body. And you're getting more good stuff into your body as opposed to bad stuff, because it's filtered. And so you could control a lot of things, a lot of processes. Like when you sleep, if you breathe through your mouth when you sleep, that's 8 hours of mouth breathing. It's horrible for your body, for your teeth. Builds up plaque in your teeth because of all the stuff that you're getting into your mouth. Right. And then if you ever wake up in the morning and you have a sore jaw, it's your mouth breathing all night. So you tape your mouth shut at night. It's crazy stuff, right? But it works. There's a guy, Matt Walker.
I breathe through my nose at night. I'm pretty sure I do.
Matt Walker talks about all that type of stuff too, and he talks about the benefits of sleep.
Oh,
and the sleep cycles and the circadian rhythms and all those types of things.
Dude, if I don't get my good 7 to 8 hours a night, I mean, it just slowly, it affects everything. Not only does it affect like your mood and your energy, if I'm not well rested, that's when I start to veer off my eating choices. I become more like, carbs, or, like you start wanting different comfort
Your brain
things.
Doesn't function all right.
Yeah, and it's just, sleep is so important. I mean, I love, to me, 8 hours of sleep is what I really need. Eight is perfect for me. Yeah. Which I know for some people is a lot, but that's what works for me. And if I don't get it, it makes such a difference. And I just I want to feel good. I'm right now, the last 3 months I've been off. I've been doing everything wrong, right? And right now, like the last couple of weeks, I've begun my process of slowly cleaning the diet out, getting the alcohol out, getting the sugars out. I still struggle with sugar and carbs sometimes, but eating less, getting better rest. Like it takes a while. By February, I'll be back on another one of my 12-week training programs where I'll be back on the bike and I'll be back running and swimming. And I'm like, I can't wait to get there, because right now, even just the thought of even going out for a bike ride, I'm like,
yeah, I remember you posting a lot of stuff about your lengthy bike rides.
Yeah, and that's coming back.
Yeah,
but that went away.
Yeah, well, it's all.
As soon as you start putting it out on social media for a while, that's a surefire example way to fall off of it.
I think it's that moderation, and what I was saying before about doing things for an extended amount of time. Like we said, diet versus lifestyle. And I think people go so hardcore, maybe not what you were doing, but like they go so hardcore into one particular thing that it becomes a definition of their lifestyle, and it becomes almost a diet because they can't sustain it for a long period of time.
Right.
That podcast with Andy Galpin was saying there's if I can remember correctly, you have 10 points in life. And he's just saying like you have 10 points, like a point system, and you have family, or I think it was like relationships, you have your business, you have your health, and there's one other aspect. I apologize, I can't remember it. And you say you can't, if you're going to rate them, how do you separate them out? And it's like how do you play with the dials? And if you put so much into one, or it's going to come out of the other.
Yep.
And it's like how do you balance that throughout the day, and how do you balance that through life? And the reason why it says 10 points because you have 4 things in 10. It's an odd number, so it can't be even all the way around. Mm-hmm. And so it's like how do you dial that in? And I think a lot of people go all in on one thing, and then the rest of it falls off. And so how long can you sustain that? If you go 100% into your business and you don't worry about your personal health, and you don't worry about your family, and you don't worry about the difference, then you can't sustain that. Something gives, right? And so if you go 100% in your family, then the other stuff gets. So it's like how do you balance out those dials?
Buddy, it's hard.
Yeah,
it's hard. That's been the biggest challenge of my most recent life, particularly the last 2 years, because we had our second child.
Right.
And the balance of business through COVID, family, trying to still somehow be a triathlete, which is, I've not succeeded in that. And right. it's tough, you know, and you do realize that, yes, you kind of got to do it all in moderation.
Sure.
I think you do have to place your personal wellness and health first before anything.
I believe that as well.
But you can't put it so far out there.
That's for the dials,
right?
You're like if something's a 3 and everything else is a 2, you got to figure out what that is. Yeah. And I think you have to share that plan, with your significant other or with your work partners and stuff like that. So if you're leaving work to go do this, then you're like, does it make work better, or does it distract from work? Like how do you equate when your significant other calls you in the middle of the day and you have a big event coming up? How do you communicate that effectively with the people in your life, work, personal, whatever that case, but then how do you prioritize yourself without being egocentric, right? So it's like that balance of all those things together. I think that was a really impactful lesson, that there's 4 things but you have 10 points, and how to go ahead and equate that.
So 10 points, basically you got 2.5 points per thing. How do you
right? How do you balance it? And then you were talking about with sound before. You got the dials, right? How do you dial that in? But then also it's important because he was mentioning he had 2 kids as well. So Andy Galpin, I think he's in California. He's got a lot of cool stuff that he does. One of the things that he does that I follow is ice between work in the middle of the workout. It's a crazy thing, but I carry ice pack when I'm working out. The whole thing is that if you hold ice in between sets, every set is like a new set because your body recovers 10 times faster. It's crazy, and it works. So he has a lot of studies. Like he works with professional athletes, and there's this new product called Cool Mitts. Literally, you wear Cool Mitts in between sets, and it cools your hands, which cools your internal core. Like there's receptors on your body that in turn you're cool. So it's not about cooling your external; it's about cooling your internal, which allows you to do more capacity. So when you're doing like working out, let's say you're from set to set, your strength decreases, right? Because your body's fatigued. Mm-hmm. But if you use the ice, you have no fatigue from set to set. So you're able to do more volume, and you're able to do more weight or less taxing on the overall body, which also helps to speed recovery.
Interesting.
Yeah. So he talks about stuff like that. So his thought process on this thing is not only that you have 10 points and 4 aspects, but also how do you communicate that to your significant other or to your family or whatever that other person is in your life. So you dial that in. Mm-hmm. Like if you're at 0 with your family, how do you communicate the reason why, so you don't lose your family? Or at work.
Can't be 0 at your family.
Right. Like it's a play. Right. But I mean, the idea is that balance.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, that stuff.
it's, listen, it's something that I think all of us in our different lives with different challenges and stuff, we're all trying to attain that as you get older. I'm hearing a lot of things from you that I really like to hear and that I like to talk about, just that constant growth, the constant, focus on health and wellness, the focus on continually learning. There's never been a better time to be alive, I think, for people who have that mindset that you do and that I do. And I think it's really cool, and I would like to say that I think we should do another episode at some point in time where we can focus, because I actually enjoy talking about this as much or more than I do. And one of the things that we're going to do when we finally get our setup fully done is we'll do afternoon panel discussions here. So if you're interested, perhaps we'll have a day where we'll do something about health and fitness and wellness, and we'll bring 2 or 3 people in and get up there and we can live stream it. Yeah,
I would love to. I think it's I'm definitely, when people talk to me about like digital signs, I have a passion. When it comes to the fitness and wellness space and the just the overall lifestyle space, it's an interesting space because a lot of people say certain things that can't back it up. So they just kind of like politics, but they say certain like one-liners, and it's that having that deeper understanding and asking those questions why, and being able to understand that why. And people kind of get lost in that. Yeah. So I think there's so much information out there that people just grab the headlines. Oh, this diet does this, or this diet does this, and they don't have that long-term vision. So I wound up being just as passionate about it, and it's the education. And it becomes a detriment at some point because of who you surround yourself with is super important, and you find very limited people go that deep.
Yeah.
And so that perspective is really important to share.
I agree. We're going to wrap up in just a second here, and I've enjoyed the conversation. But you just said the word why, and I know the Simon Sinek, like, what's your why? But have you ever heard there's something else that says like, ask why 10 times. So it's essentially like when somebody, when you're trying to figure out something, why do you want something, like ask why 10 times and just see where it ultimately leads. It's fascinating. I've done it with myself sometimes, and you're basically like, I've found it basically leads me to, because I want to be closer to a higher spirit. Like that's sort of where it all,
it's a great place to go,
ultimately leads.
And that's another conversation too. But the opportunity to ask why is something that is not embraced in today's society. I think today's society is very puddle deep. Where it's all headline driven, and people don't know why they feel the way that they feel. But if you question them, then they come at you because they assume that you disagree with them, as opposed to just simply asking why.
Yeah.
But when we look at our life cycle, what is the most common question that a kid asks? Why?
Mm-hmm.
Why can't we just be more childlike?
I know.
What's so wrong about learning through asking why? And I think that's really what I try to do, and that annoys more people than not. I just want to know why. And if you can't substantiate the reason why you do something, then maybe you need to look internally to ask yourself that question, because you don't owe it to me, but you do owe it to yourself if you are introspective that way.
Cheers to that.
Thanks, buddy.
Todd, thanks, man. I enjoy a great conversation.
Thanks, Chris.
Lots of good wisdom and insight from you on multiple fields. We'll do it again, all right?
All right,
I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, bro.
Thanks.
All right, peace.
Bye.